So I'm going to explain this third version. It's a version C. Nobody has version C, you only have A or B. So what you need to do right now is identify which question that is. So look for that question on your quiz, and I'm about to explain it. Now, the only difference in solving an equation and an inequality, the only difference is that if you multiply or divide by a negative on your last step, you have to flip the inequality symbol. So let's start solving. Let's get the b by itself. You're obviously going to multiply both sides by 8 to get rid of the fraction. And when you multiply both sides by 8, you're going to end up with negative 5b. We did not flip it because we did not multiply by a negative 8. We multiplied by 8. So it stays the same right now. Okay, now 15 times 8. With the calculator, you could do it's 120. And we still need to continue solving to get b by itself. So you're going to divide by negative 5 and divide by negative 5. And that was the last step. And we are dividing by a negative. So your answer will have an inequality that's changed. You have to flip that inequality symbol because we divided by negatives. I saw a lot of you guys not flip it. You guys just treated it like an equation and left the inequality exactly the same. So the answer is b is less than negative 24, which is not on there.
It's because it's the wrong one.
So yeah, it's not on here. This was a typo. I gave you guys a freebie. I told everybody to put B, even though the answer wasn't B. This is the correct answer, and on tomorrow's new quiz, it will be updated. It will be correct. This was a mistake right here. That should have been a less than symbol. So that'll be corrected on tomorrow's version. So once again, guys, when you multiply or divide by a negative, right here you're dividing by a negative. This is your last step. When you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, that inequality has to change. And that was like the number one mistake I saw in so many students. You did not change it. You need to change it. Let's move on to number 2. This one definitely requires some simplification, right? That means distributive property and combining like terms. I recommend circling the value you're going to distribute and drawing arrows. Negative 8 times positive 5 is negative 40 with the z. And then negative 8 times positive 3, that's a negative 24. And of course, we're going to bring down the inequality symbol. We're going to just bring it down. And then we're going to distribute on the right side. Negative 10 times 4z, that's negative 40z. And negative 10 times negative 3, that's positive 30. Okay, hopefully you guys are identifying which question this is on your quiz and doing it correctly. So now we need to solve this thing, and as you can see, we need to get the variable by itself on one side, but the problem is that there's variables on both sides. You need to get the z only on one side. So when we get rid of this negative 40z by adding 40z by doing the opposite, that eliminates, but when you do it to the other side, you add 40z over here, it also eliminates. So what do we have left? We have a negative 24 is less than 30. Now the question is that always true or is that always false?
That's always false.
That's always true. Any negative number is always going to be less than any positive number. Okay. So that's about it. So what do we say? We say all real numbers, and the answer is B, all real numbers. Again, because it's always true, it's all real numbers. Always true, it's all real numbers. If it's something false, like let's say you're working this out and you got 5 is less than 2. Well, that's false. That's impossible. That's when you would say no, as in no solution, right? Then that would be this symbol right here, if that were the case. But this is always true, so you say all real numbers. Number 3, on version C, you need to find out which one it is on your quiz. Look for it. So you want to simplify first and then solve, right? You can't start getting A by itself until you make it simpler. And how do you make it more simple? By distributing and combining like terms. There is no distributive property, but on the left side there is 3a minus 6a, and when you combine that in your head, you get negative 3a. And of course, we need to bring down this plus 10, which you can't even really add it. You can't add apples with numbers. So we're just going to continue bringing everything down, rewriting the inequality. That's what we call a simplified inequality. Now we need to get a by itself on one side. So what are we going to get rid of first? The 10. Minus 10 on both sides. Let's rewrite what we have. We have the negative 3a, we have the greater than symbol, and a negative 30 on the right side. So for my final step, I am going to be dividing by negative 3, dividing by negative 3. Now, whenever you're in your mind, when you hear the words dividing by negative. Right there, you need to know, I need to flip the inequality symbol. So my answer will be A, flip it, positive 10. Because negative 30 divided by negative 3 is positive 10. But because we divided by a negative, because this was a negative here, we had to divide by a negative, which means that this had to flip. If this would have been a regular 3, without the negative, you would have divided by 3. Divided by 3, this would not have changed. But because we divided by a negative, you have to flip the inequality symbol. So this answer was C right here. Let's move on. Number 4, we need to get this W by itself on one side. We're going to get rid of the fraction first, multiply by 2. Put that 2 up on top in the numerator position so it could clearly cancel with that bottom one. But what you do to one side, you must do to the other. Did we multiply by a negative 2?
Yeah.
No, we multiplied by a positive 2. So the inequality is not going to flip. What do we have left? We have W plus 3. You bring it down and you end up with negative 16. You do not flip the inequality because you did not multiply by a negative. And for my final step, what am I doing? Subtracting 3, subtracting 3. Again, did I multiply or divide by a negative? No, I just subtracted 3. So I have W. It does not flip. It stays exactly the same. Negative 19. And there's your answer. Let's look for that answer down here. And that is letter C. Letter C is the correct answer on that one. Number 5, we want to solve for A. A is on the right side. I need to get A by itself. I'm going to start by adding 1 to get rid of that guy. What I do to one side, I do to the other, plus 1 over here. I end up with 14 is greater than 2/3 A. And I still need to get the A by itself. I don't like that fraction. I want to get rid of that fraction by doing what? Multiplying both sides by 3. That way the 3's cancel out. 3 times 14 is 42, I believe. So we have 42. This did not flip because we didn't divide or multiply by a negative. We just multiplied by 3. This ends up being 2A. Okay, so now we need to get rid of the 2 right in front of the A. So let's divide by 2. Divide by 2. We have A. Doesn't change because we didn't divide by a negative. 21. Now, guys, this is the correct answer. That's the correct answer. But just like on an equation, if you solve an equation and you have 21 equals x, you're not going to leave it like that. You're going to change it to be x equals 21. Same thing here. You have 21 is greater than a. You don't want to leave it like that. You want to have the a on this side and the number on that side. So you want to take this whole thing and just flip them. Okay? It is the correct answer, though. So what I want you to do is to put the a on the left side, the 21 on the right side. But since this is the correct answer, the inequality has to remain open to the original value. So if it's opening to the 21, it has to continue opening to the 21 because we said this is the correct answer. So it has to open to the 21. Make sense? So this really says A is less than 21, and that's the correct answer, letter A. Moving on. Number 6. By the way, you need to show all this work in order to get credit. Okay? If you just have the right answers with no work, you don't get credit, even if you have the right answers. Okay, so let's move on and get T by itself on the left side of this inequality. So you could either multiply everything by 6, or you could get rid of the minus 5 first by adding. It's totally up to you guys. I think a lot of students hate fractions, so let's just get rid of the fraction right off the bat by multiplying everything by 6. Negative 5 times 6, the fraction times 6, the 9 times 6. So on the left side, we're going to have negative 30. And then the 6 on top and the 6 on the bottom cancel out. You will have a minus t, I'll do a capital T, is greater than or equal to negative 54. 9 times 6 is 54. So let's get t by itself by getting rid of that minus 30. By doing the opposite, plus 30 cancels out. What you do to one side, do to the other side, plus 30. You will end up with negative t is greater than or equal to negative 24. So what we need to do here is, final step, you don't want a negative t, you want a positive t. So you could either multiply both sides by negative 1 or divide both sides by negative 1, whatever you want. So some people like to imagine that there's a 1 right there. So that's a negative 1 times t. That way you could get rid of it by dividing by negative 1, dividing by negative 1. Either way, you're multiplying or dividing by a negative, which means that you're going to have to flip the inequality symbol. So the t does become positive, but you need to change that inequality symbol, and you get positive 24 right there. So t is less than or equal to 24. That would be option A. right there. Moving on to number 7. Number 7, again, we have another inequality. We have variables on both sides. Let's solve this thing. You can't distribute, can't combine like terms. Let's just get u by itself on one side. So I'm going to get the 6u to the other side by doing the opposite of positive 6u. I'm going to subtract 6u. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. 4 take away 6, that's negative 2. And of course, we're talking about u's here. Bring down the minus, the 6, bring down the inequality, negative 20. Okay, so we need to get u by itself on the left side now. So what would I do? Add 6. Add 6. My new equation, or my new inequality will be negative 2u is greater than or equal to negative 14. So for my final step, what am I doing? Dividing by negative 2, dividing by negative 2. The 2's cancel out, and you end up with u, but you have to state the whole thing. U is greater than or, oh no wait, less than or equal to, because we divided by a negative 7. So you have to state u is less than or equal to 7. That would be C. Let's move on, number 8. Some people freak out with this one because they have a 0 on the right side. You always simplify first, distributive property, combine like terms, and then worry about getting n by itself. So on the left side, we're going to distribute the negative 3. Circle the minus sign in front. That way you don't make mistakes. Draw some arrows. Negative 3 times n, that's negative 3n. Negative 3 times negative 6, that's positive 18. Bring down the 5n that's out in the front. And of course, you could bring down the inequality since there's nothing to do on the right side anyway. But on the left side, after distributing, you're always supposed to combine like terms if possible, and we could combine those two. 5 take away 3. If I have 5 noodles and I take away 3 noodles, I will have 2 noodles left, right? Plus 18, bring down the greater than or equal to 0. So now we have a 2-step equation that we need to solve. How do I get rid of that plus 18?
Minus 18.
Minus 18. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So my new inequality will be 2n. The inequality did not flip because I didn't multiply or divide by a negative. I'm subtracting 18. 0 take away 18 is minus 18. So for my final step, I'm going to do what? Divide by 2, divide by 2. And notice, I'm not dividing by a negative. The 2's cancel, and it does not flip. Negative 9 is the answer. Now, some of us are thinking, wait, you did divide by a negative. No, I didn't. This is a negative number divided by 2. Okay, the only way it flips is if you're dividing or multiplying by a negative. So the correct answer there is C. Moving on to number 9, this requires a lot of simplification. Let's do distributive property on the left side, circle, arrow. 3 times z is 3z. Arrow to the 1, 3 times 1 is 3. Bring down the plus and the 11. Let's continue combining like terms after distributing. 3 plus 11 is 14. So I have 3z plus 14. That's all I could do on the left side. Now let's go to the right side and distribute. Negative 2 times z, that's negative 2z. Negative 2 times 13 times positive 13, that's a negative 26. And of course, the inequality, you're just going to bring it down. Like if it were an equation, you would just bring down the equal sign. So now we need to get the z by itself on one side. And if you think about where the z is at, it's on both sides, the left and the right. So you need to get rid of one of them. I want to get rid of that minus 2z by doing the opposite, plus 2z. What you do to one side, do to the other, plus 2z. You will get 5z plus 14 is less than negative 26. So for my last 2 steps, subtract the 14, subtract 14. So you have a negative, you owe $26 and you owe $14. You're really going to be adding them together.
Negative 40.
Negative 40. So you're going to end up with a new inequality that reads 5z, let me put a line here so nobody gets confused, 5z is less than negative 40. I didn't flip the inequality symbol because I did not multiply or divide by a negative. So my final step here, I have a 5 times z, so I want to get rid of that by dividing by 5. Dividing by 5. Am I dividing by a negative 5? No, it's a regular 5. So the inequality does not change. This cancels z, the inequality stays Negative 40 divided by 5 is negative 8. So Z is less than negative 8. That would be D, option D. Moving on, number 10. I need to get A by itself. What do?
Times 5.
Times 5. Thank you. Cancels. Times 5. What do I have left?
Negative A is less than.
Negative A is less than negative 70. Final step.
Divide by negative 1.
Divide by negative 1, right? If there's a minus 1 in there, you're going to divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. I'm dividing by a negative, so A, switch the inequality symbol, positive 70 is your answer. Now, let me go back and do this a slightly different way. Some people, that was kind of like 2 steps. Some people like doing it in 1 step, which is pretty easy. All you got to do is be careful. So if you see that there's a negative divided by 5, you could actually multiply by negative 5. And what will that do? The negative 5 up here and the 5 with the negative here will completely cancel out, and it'll just give you A. And if you multiply the left side by negative 5, you have to multiply the right side by negative 5, and that would also give you 70, and that would be your last step. So what did we just do on the last step? We multiplied by negative 5, which means that we have to flip the inequality symbol. So instead of being a less than, it's going to be a greater than. So you see, we get the same answer either way. It's just up to you, however you feel more comfortable. Let's move on to, oh, wait a minute. We need to identify which answer that is. That is D. Let's move on to number 11. So a lot of people get confused on number 11 and 12 because they give you an original amount and they give you a new amount. And you got to pay attention to the instructions. It says to find the percent of change and round to the nearest whole percent. This was from chapter 2, and a lot of people messed up on this. All right, a lot of people got confused. What do we need for number 11 right here, where we have an original value and a new value? We need to know the proportion is over of equals percent over 100. We need to know that. And here's the magic question. What is the change of the original? 20. I mean, if you ask yourself this question and know this, you should be able to set it up and get the right answer, okay? Because you guys just said that 20 is the change, from 140 to 160, 20 is the change of the original. So when I say what is the change, we're saying 20, so put 20 in place of the is, and the of is of the original, right? Of the original. What's the original? 140. I saw some students put the bigger value always as the of. That's incorrect. It's really of the original. So some people put 160 because they saw it bigger. That's incorrect. It's always of the original. So always go to the original number, put that in the bottom. Now it does say equals percent over 100. Now the whole question is to find the percent of change. So we don't know this percent. So it's better to just call it X and solve for X. Now you could simplify, reduce it, right? The zeros cancel. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 140 divided by 10 is 14. You could even reduce further if you wanted to. 1 over 7. If you reduce 2 over 14, it reduces down to 1/7. And then you cross multiply. 1 times 100, that's 100. 7 times X, that's 7X. So you really have 100 equals 7X. And then you just divide by 7, and we get X equals, so you get 14.2858, but they want a whole percent, and that would be the 14 because the 2 does not change it to a 15. So if you look at your answers, first of all, this is an increase in price from original 140 to 160. Increase, they're all increase, okay? And you want to look for the 14% increase, which is B. There's no way it's going to go down to 13%. If this were a 5 or higher, it would go up to 15. But anyway, that's it. See, it's not that bad if you know these notes right here, okay? Jumping to number 12, same exact concept. So when we set up the proportion, what is the change? From 76 to 60, what is the change? It's a $16 drop, right? So that is the change. That's why we put it up on the is position. What is the change? It's 16. So you put the 16 up there where the is. Of the original amount. The original is 76 in this case. So put a 76 right there. And again, The original question is what percent change? So we don't know the percent. We're going to call it X, but we know it's always over 100. So we can put a big X right here instead of the percent. And let's do all this with the calculator instead of reducing. You could reduce. Let's just do it all with the calculator. When we say 16 times 100, 16 times 100 equals, and then we're going to say 76 times X. 76 times X. So that's really going to be 1600 equals 76X. With the calculator, divided by 76. X equals 21.052 if you do it with the calculator. Yes, everybody agree? Okay. So does the 0.0 make that 21 go up to a 22? No. The 0.0, you just leave it at 21, right? So it's a 21% decrease. So option A is correct for 12. Let's move on. A lot of people got confused with the calculating the discount and then taxes. So let's do this. What we need to know here is this. It's the original amount times 1 minus R. If you are doing a discount, you put a minus. If you're doing taxes, then you take your price and you put a plus. A discount makes the price go down. Taxes make the price go up. Makes total sense. So let's first find out the discount. This is what we're going to set up. There it is. Original amount, 375. Multiplied by, open up some parentheses, 1 minus. 25% is the rate, but you want to write this percent as a decimal. So imagine that there's a decimal out here at the back and move it 1 space, 2 spaces. That's why you're going to end up with a decimal in the front. That's why it's 0.25. You could put 0.25, or you could just type it in 0.25. And then let the calculator do the work for you. So we end up with 281.25. If you type this in exactly the way it is on your calculator, including the parentheses, the minus, type it exactly the way it is, you should get 281.25. So far we have calculated the discount, and this is our new price, 281.25. So what we're going to do now is use the other formula, which is the one with the plus, because now we're going to add on taxes. So I guess it shouldn't say original right here. It should say new. Your new amount. So when we plug it in to your new formula, here's your new price, and then times parenthesis 1 plus, because we're doing taxes, it's going to make the price go up. Now right here, the percent on the taxes, again, you don't want it as a percent, you want it as a decimal. So you have to remember there's like an invisible decimal out here. You need to move it 1 space, 2 spaces. So you're going to have a decimal right here, but you need to fill in that space with a 0. So that's really a 0.06 that you need to type in. And of course, with the calculator, you get 298.125. Perfect. Now, right here, we really are talking about dollars, not whole percents, right? So we need to have dollars and cents. So here, $298.12. But this 5 right here makes the 2 go up to a 3. So it's really $298.13. $298.13, which is option D. Okay, so this is definitely too long of a video. I'm going to stop right here and do a second video with the rest of the questions.